Hi everybody. I'm gonna make a video this week regarding a couple topics that you guys asked about last week. So, I read through your posts from Monday, and uh, I got a lot of interesting ideas that you guys wanted to go through, and obviously I can't cover all of those in a half an hour video. So I try to pick some that I thought were the most common and maybe would be the most useful for you. And again, we're going to be doing this the next few weeks, so I think just to give you an idea of what the schedule might look like if you're planning on adding some of these features in. I think for this week, I'm focusing mostly on images input, um, and by input I mean like key input, mouse input, moving images around, changing images around, and also the text box functionality, so a user can input text. Um, Next week, I'm going to focus on more of the reading and writing stuff, particularly with CSV files. So if your data is in an Excel file or a CSV file, then how do we get that data out and look at it? And I'm also going to look over one of the graphing libraries, matplotlib, which I believe is available to everyone through the Software Center. Um, and then in a few more weeks, I might do a little mini lesson on like writing AI. I got some questions about how do you make smarter movement or kind of give your program a little bit of intelligence. So I'm still thinking about that a little bit, but I, I'll do something on that regarding that. And then for the final week, I'm not 100% sure what, but we'll think of something to do. As things come up, please feel free to email me uh, and let me know what it is that you'd like to see. Okay. Um, all right. So without further ado, just a few other notes that people asked about. So one of the things that um, someone asked about was time allocation. Like, what's the best? What should I be looking at in terms of how to break this down with the time remaining that we have? So right now we're at the end of week 2 of the project. So I'm hoping that most of you guys have an idea that you've tried out, that you've tried to start, and have gotten about a good way into your code. Um, Maybe you're starting to run into some difficulties and things like that. And again, I want to remind you guys that I do have office hours Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And I'm also available via appointment. So if you want me to check out your code, that's shoot me an email or just drop into the office hours with the questions, and I can help you out with that. So a few of you have used those already. So um, the what else? So yeah, for as far as time allocation goes, the responses shouldn't really take that long. So like honestly, like the last like probably you could write the responses in like 2 or 3 days. So the majority of the time over the next 3 weeks, I imagine, is going to be being spent on code, and then you might need 2 or 3 days to work on the writing the responses. But I think for the most part, you should be working on the code. Um, as always, every project is going to be a little bit independent in terms of like what your workflow is going to look like. What I prefer is always getting it set up to the point where I can debug it. So I like trying to get the code to at least run with, your basic Pygame window, and, try and add in feature by feature. So think about um, what is it that I want to accomplish first, and then make sure that you get that done and then debug it. Make sure it works before trying to add in the stuff. The worst thing you could do is like work on a feature. Oh, it's not working. There's bugs in my code. I'm going to start and try and do this, and then you can't test it because you still have bugs in your code from the other thing. So you know you want to try to make sure that feature is implemented correctly so that it can be tested. And if it doesn't work all the way, then you got to make sure you comment it out and it gets to a point where the program can run. That way you don't have errors building on each other as you're working through this project. So that's just my advice. Again, if you feel like you need a little bit more direction, please feel free to schedule a meeting with me. All right. Um, Another thing that people asked about was installing and using other libraries. So Python makes it really easy to use any other library, and you're allowed to use any library in these projects. So, feel free to, get creative. It's really easy to install your own libraries with PyCharm. You just go down into this interpreter settings window, and then all you have to do is click the little plus sign. On Macs, it's going to be down here. And then you can search through all the available packages that are, available to you. And so if you find one that, uh, that you like, I think there was one, can't remember what it was called. I don't know. There was one that let you scrape stuff from the internet. I don't remember exactly what it was, but there's so many different libraries. So feel free to, use them, search them, whatever you want to do, and then you just add them in and use them. Now, if you're on a school laptop, you don't have permissions to do this. It won't let you install them. So if there is a library that you really want to use, I might be able to get that for you. Email me what library it is that you want, and I could maybe get it available on the Software Center for you to download. I don't know how that's going to work since you're off network, so it's a little bit up in the air. But there are a couple libraries available in the Software Center, so feel free to check that out. There's an image library called Pillow that I believe is available. I believe Matplotlib is available. They might have also made pandas available, which is one that you can use to analyze data with. So yeah, so those are just some other options. Okay, so now for the bulk of the video today, what I really wanted to focus on was these user interactions, keyboard, mouse interactions, and images specifically. So I have my code pulled up here, and I hope you can see this okay. I'm going to zoom in a little bit, but what I want to do is just kind of go through, what I have here. So I created a little application that I'm not really sure what its purpose is at the moment, but other than having some cute dog pictures and cat pictures. So basically what I have here is an image that's going to show up, and you can move it around with the mouse. You can click and drag it with the mouse. You can use the arrow keys as well. I'm using WAS and D to move the image around. I can click and drag to move it. And then I also have this text box over here, which allows me to type in, all right, so this is a picture of the dog, so that doesn't do anything, but I could type in cat, and it'll change the image to a cat. So I'm able to get user input. I can change to kitten, and now the image is a kitten. And again, I can move that image around. And finally, I could have a puppy. So I just have 4 different images that I can use. But hopefully in this tutorial, what you'll learn is how to do multiple images in Pygame, even change the image. So let's say you're building a game and you want to animate the characters. You want there to be a jump picture, you want there to be a idle picture, you want there to be a run picture. So you could have a character state, and you could switch the image based on what state that character is in. And hopefully today shows you that. Maybe you're doing something like a temperature conversion or currency conversion or some other conversion type thing, and you want the user to be able to type in text boxes here. So I'll show you guys the code for that. And I'm going to share this code with you as well on Schoology, so you can use it as well. So let's get into it. So the first thing I wanted to show you guys, there's just basic Pygame setup, so I'm not going to go through that stuff again. The first thing I want to show you is how I added these multiple images into the scene here. So you always want to load the images outside of the loop. If you load them inside of the loop, then that means they're going to load every frame, and your game is going to lag, or your animation is going to lag. So this image load, you only really want to call it one time, and it needs to be outside of the loop. Okay. And so I have each of the 4 images that I load in: cat, dog, puppy, kitten. If you had more, you could certainly create like a list of the file names as strings, and add them in. So for example, like image names, I could just say, okay, I want to have a list of cat JPEG, dog JPEG, and puppy JPEG and kitten JPEG. And then once you have the images names in there, then you could say like for file and image name, and then you could say pygame load, pygame.image.load, and then you could say I put them in a folder, and then you could say images plus, and then file, something like that, and then it's going to load all 4 of those in. So that's that's an option of something that you could do if you have a lot of images and you want to put them into a list. Loading resources is important. But I just have them. I just had 4 of them, so I just did them like this. I scale them all to be the same size, 400 by 300. So if you want to resize an image, you certainly can. Maybe you want to make it like a smaller sprite that's going to show up on the screen. So I could change. Maybe I should do variables for this, but for instance, the cat image, if I type that in, is now going to be a 100 by 100, and I can then click that and move that around and drag that around with my mouse. So that's an option too. You can scale images and resize them all. So even though these file names, I put them in a folder, by the way, called images, just in case you're wondering why I put images before this. That's because that's where the path of the file is located. Okay, so then I used a dictionary here to make my code a little bit more straightforward here, which was, so I basically took the string of each name and linked it to the object. Now, what is this object here? So cat, dog, puppy, and kitten. These are pygame.Transform.scale returns a surface. So these are all surfaces that include the image loaded in on that surface with the width and height given by 400 and 300. So what I'm essentially doing is I'm creating a dictionary that maps the string dog to the image of the dog, the string puppy to the image of puppy, the string cat to cat, and the string kitten to kitten. And then I just select the dog by default. So this is just my starting value. If I change what img is equal to, like let's say I wanted to start with a cat picture to begin with, and I can change that to cat, and then the cat would start. I could even do random dot choice of dog, puppy, cat, and kitten, so that it picks one at random. I have to import random for that. And that would allow it to oh yeah, sorry. I guess I'm doing it that way. That's kind of a weird way of doing it. Probably just pick the string. But yeah, now each time I run it, it's going to be a different one. I could have just put this without quotes, and then I would have had to add this images. Let's do that. That looks cleaner. Just have it choose one of the surfaces. All right. Cool. So, you can do something like that. If I don't know exactly what your application is going to look like, but if you have an image that you want to change, a character that changes states or something like that, this is an easy way of doing it. You might want to have multiple images, and in that case, essentially, if I want 2 of these to display, then I just have to create another variable like image2, and then pick another image, and basically I'm doing all the same code. At this point, if you're going to have multiple images moving around, it might be advisable to make a class that controls all those behaviors. So creating a class that will obviously load in an image based on the file name, just like we did up here, transform it to the correct width and height, and then keep track of its position, its X and its Y, so that you can, and then you can even create a function that moves it, something like that. And you could even write an event handler in there. So like if someone clicks on that image, it should do something, which could be useful for like buttons and things like that. So I didn't do that in this tutorial because I didn't want it to get too long. But maybe that's something I can show you guys later on if that's something that you'd be interested to see in making that image class. But some of you might be able to figure it out from the code that I've included here. So all right, so all this does is just blitz the image in the first time. I don't really need that. It's going to get blitted in the loop. And this sets the X and Y to 0, 0. So if you want a different starting position, then you can obviously change these. So this is taking the surface of the screen, and onto it, it's splitting the image that is being randomly chosen from these. And this is the position of this. So if I wanted to start in the center, I could do width divided by 2. Oops, all caps. Height divided by 2. And that now, okay, it won't because I don't have that down here. Because yeah. All right. Like I said, I don't need this line here. I just need this one here. Just setting their X and Y. So that's the ones I should change. Okay, it's all right. I think it's fine. I'm not sure why I went to divide to down there, but that's all right. I think it might be my monitor resolution or something going on that's kind of weird. But anyway, all right. So let's set this to 0 and 0 again, so it spawns in the top left. All right. Now, let's see. Okay, so what next? Let's not talk about input boxes yet. Let's talk about movement. So how did I make this image move? So a lot of this is going to happen in your event loop. So I did this in 2 ways. The first thing I did was I just said, if I'm looking at a mouse button down event here. So if event type is pygame mouse button down. So this event fires every time the user clicks their mouse. And if the user clicks their mouse, then what I wanted to do is I wanted to check if first I just did something pretty straightforward, which was, I'll show you here, which was I'm just going to change the X and Y to the mouse position. And then I'm just going to comment this stuff out here. So all this did here was simply move it to wherever I click on the screen. And this is okay, but not really what I wanted for the purpose of this application. But if you do just want to check to see where the user clicked, this is the way to do it. Just mouse dot get position. So what I did next was I checked for a collision, and basically I wanted to set a focus box. So basically what I didn't want to happen was I didn't want the user to be able to click here or click somewhere else on the screen and drag and have the image move. So I didn't want this to move. So I needed to tell the computer that I actually clicked on the image first, and then wherever I move the mouse, that's where it's going to move that object to. All right, and so I have this variable called focus, which I set to none here. And then whenever the user clicks on the image, and I do this by this collide point function. So image get rectangle gets the surface's rectangle, which in fact is at 0, 0. And so what I'm doing is I'm moving that image's rectangle by X and Y. And this is just to ensure that when I actually move X and Y to something other than 0, 0, I'm actually checking the collide point. You get a weird bug if you don't have that move function in there. So I set my focus to image, and then I have the mouse start X and mouse start Y to be the pygame get position here. So what I basically do is I'm keeping track of when the user clicked the mouse button down. All right. Now, if the user didn't click on the object, then I just set the focus to none. And now what I do is I check if the image is focused, that means the user's already clicked on the image. And the event type is mouse button up. That means the user is now letting go of the image. So now I want to drop the image where that is. And so what I do is I then get the mouse position. I call this mouse end Y, mouse end X. And you'll notice I have these 4 variables up here. A lot of times you're just going to make variables so that you can use them in your loop. I do that with a couple things here. So mouse end X, mouse end Y, and then I change the image X by the delta end minus start. And this is what actually shifts the image by a certain amount. All I'm doing is I'm shifting image X and image Y, and that actually moves the image. Again, if you were making a class for this, then you'd want to pass delta mouse X and delta mouse Y to a method called move that takes in X and Y and then move the variables inside of that class. All right, so hopefully that makes sense. Now, the next thing I wanted to show you is, well, how do I get it to move with arrow keys? So a naive way of doing this is actually with, I'm going to comment this out for a second, with these key down functions. So if an event type is a pygame key down, and then you can check this. Now, I'm going to show you what this looks like. So I'm just going to check if the W, S, A, or D key is pressed. Now you'll notice if I just press it one time and hold it down, it only moves the image 1 pixel. So this isn't extremely useful because if I want to slide this image down, you can't see my my fingers, but I'm basically spamming the S key right now, and it's moving down 1 pixel at a time. And I'm spamming the D key now, and it's moving 1 pixel at a time. So this way of doing this is, it's good for like if you want the user to like select an option. Maybe you want them to maybe you're making a game where the user has 3 skills to use, and the skills are hotkeyed to keys 1, 2, and 3. Then when the user presses 1, that option gets selected. They don't need to hold 1 down. They just need to like select that option. Then maybe you're waiting for a mouse click of where to cast that spell or something like that. Then this would be the option for you. But for continuous movement, this really isn't the option. So I'm going to go ahead and comment this out. But you might find a use for that. So I'm going to leave it in there, but commented so you can see it. And I'm going to go over this right here. So basically what we're doing here again is if the image is focused, so I don't want to move the image. If I'm typing in the text bar and I have to use the A key, I don't want to move the image at that point they're typing, right? So I want to make sure the image is focused. That means the user clicked on it. And this is useful in case you want your keys to be able to move multiple objects. Then based on what object is focused, that's what object gets moved. So instead of kind of doing the if statement here, you could do it inside of here, and you could say if the focus is image, then we're going to move this object. If the focus is image 2, then we're going to move that object, something like that. But the basic behind this is we're using this pygame get keys pressed function, or sorry, get pressed. This basically returns a list of all the keys and how many, and it returns a 0 or a 1 or a true or false value if that key is being pressed down. 1 for true, 0 for false. And so basically what I'm just doing is I'm checking to see if you print out this list of keys, you're just going to see it prints out a bunch of zeros. But when you hold down a key, it actually tells you what key is being pushed down. And so what I'm doing here is I'm checking if keys, and I'm going to look up the key here, the W key, pygame.KW. These are all pygame constants. And basically you can do any key you want. Just do pygame and then K and then underscore. If you want the left arrow, then you would type left. If you want left bracket, if you want shift, these are under K mods. So like shift, control, alt, so things like that. If you want the number keys, I think there's other ones for the numpad as well. Not sure exactly, but any constant that you want, you can put in here as well. So that was W. So again, you can use any key you're looking up, and then basically I just have W move the image up, S move the image down, A move the image to the left by subtracting from X, and then D moving it to the right by adding to X. All right, so that's what this does. So now when I have this enabled, I click on the image, and then I can use W. I can hold it, I can hold in D, I can hold in S, I can hold in A, and I can hold in W. So this would be good if you are making an application where you have a character move and you want to move him around the screen with the arrow keys. This could be something that you would use for that. You could even make him jump with like a space key or something like that in here. All right. So if you want to hold keys down, you want to do it this way. If you want the keys to fire one event when you press them the first time, then you want to do it this way. All right. So we covered mouse input, we covered key input, and then the final thing, and kind of moving objects around. I guess I'll show you the rest of the code here. The only thing we're really doing here is splitting this image at X and Y, and this is why I'm constantly changing X and Y variables here. This is what my dog does all day. She just lays under a pile of blankets. Lucy, 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 say hi. Lucy. Anyway, okay, where was I? Yeah, so this is imaging X, image Y, etc. The last thing I want to show you guys is text box input. And for this, I actually just stole someone's library from, or stole a post from Stack Overflow, which you guys are allowed to do for the create task, as long as you cite that source and you don't write that as your own creation. Sometimes it's useful to use a library that someone already created, and there's tons of Pygame text box libraries that people have written that you can put in your code. So I do want to go through it because it is important to be able to understand what is happening in libraries that you're using. A lot of times, like you don't just want to use them without understanding why they work. And so I grabbed this one, and it's this just sets inactive and active colors. So you'll notice that when I click on the text box, it changes colors to being like highlighted. And then if I click somewhere else, it unhighlights. And it will only register key presses whenever it's highlighted. Okay. That's what this input box is. It's an object, so it's an object-oriented version of an input box. And basically all it is it's a rectangle. And so this is the constructor for it, and it's built with an XY width and height. This is an optional parameter to initialize text in it. It basically creates a rectangle, sets its color, and sets a text variable to be whatever is being typed in. And then it has this active variable of false and true. And this would be something that you could use if you had multiple images and you wanted the user to click on an image and then move that image. You could have each image have an active, true or false, and then it would only move if that event is active. Here, I actually really like this the way they did this. They handled this event, and you guys could do this as well for images. I could have done this for my code. Basically what they do is they say if there's a mouse button down event, it's possible that is a click on the box. And if it's a key event, it's possible that is a click on the, or that's a key press that we want to type into our box. So you'll notice in the code up here, I've added a line right here to input box handle event. This basically says, hey, some event happened. Does it pertain to the input box? And I'll come back to this in a little bit. So if it's a mouse button down, basically we want to see if the user clicked on the input box rectangle. And so we're using the collide point function to check against the rectangle, and we're toggling the active variable to either be true or false. And if it was some other event, we're going to basically say, okay, they did not click on it, so let's set active to false. So if it was active and they click somewhere else, now it's not active. And then they change the color based on that. The event type key down. Oh, this is a little cool notation. I don't know if you guys have used this before, but basically what this is saying is set color to color active if this variable is true. Otherwise, set it to color inactive. It's similar to the question mark notation in Java, if you've used that before. It's just a little bit shorthand than writing out an else if. Here they do event type key down. So if it wasn't a mouse press, it might be a key down. So let's check. Is the text box active? And then if it is, then we're just going to check. If they hit the enter key, then this means they want to enter the text. And so what we do is we save what's in the text box as output. We reset the text box to be empty, and we return that output. And this is where I'm actually using down here, this try except. So basically I'm saying, take this, and I want to lowercase it for comparison so that if they type cat in all caps, it still loads the cat image. You don't really need this, but what this does end up doing is if I put dot lower here, then there's a possibility that this gives an error, because if this event doesn't return anything, you can't lower none, and you'll get an error. And this is why I'd use the try except here. So I'm going to try to lowercase this, and if that throws some error, then I'm just going to ignore it down here. So here we have, and then I basically say if that text is in the images, which again, reminding you guys that images was here, my dictionary. So if they typed in one of these 4 words, then I'm going to set the image to that image's text. And this is what actually changes the image. So then whenever I blit the image, it's going to be based on what text was inputted. And that all happens because we're returning the output here. All right. Well, what other keys could they press? Well, they could push backspace, and in this case, this just deletes the last thing from the list. And you can see it. This is a nice way of getting from 0 to the last character. And then otherwise, we add the Unicode of that event. So this is a way of getting that text, and then we re-render the text. I actually want to modify this a little bit and put this re-rendering up into here as well, so that when the text is blanked out, since I'm returning the output here, and output is only being returned in one of these cases, then this doesn't get hit. So I'm going to add it back into here. All right, and then updating the text box basically just resizes it. If the text is too long, it will resize the width of the text box. And then, so this has a default of 200. So even if you set the width to less than that, it'll resize it to 200 when you update it. And then this draws the text surface into the rectangle with an offset of 5 and 5. And then draws the rectangle around the text. All right, so it's a cool little library, and you can feel free to use this or modify it however you see fit. And this is how you can get it to work in with your code. All right, you have to make sure you call update on that input box and draw that input box in, because it is an object. And then this is where I initialized it. So those are the pieces of code for the input box. Right. And so I know this video is going on now 35 minutes or so, so I'm gonna wrap it up here. Again, like I said, I'm gonna share this code with you guys so that you can, so you can check it out yourself, and use what you see fit for the performance task, and go from there. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this video, and can get something out of it that you're going to be able to use in your create task. All right. Thanks for tuning in. I'll see you later.